They banned me from my own grandmother's funeral, not knowing she left me the entire empire. Please stick with me as I tell you my story, one filled with betrayal, secrets, and revenge. And don't forget to support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this with someone who needs to hear it. I found out my grandmother was dead from a Facebook post. Not a phone call, not a message, not even a text, just a photo. A photo of her casket. It was posted by my Aunt Clara, who captioned it coldly. Rest well, Mama Ojeki, laid to rest today. May her soul find peace. Today. That word hit me like a car. They were burying her, right now, and nobody had even told me she was gone. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. My phone nearly slipped from my hand. A lump rose in my throat so thick I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my car keys without thinking. I didn't even change my clothes. I just drove like a madwoman across the city. Mama Ojeki wasn't just my grandmother. She raised me, fed me, protected me when the rest of the family treated me like I didn't belong. When my own mother walked out and never looked back, Mama stayed. She was my entire world. And now I was racing down I-85 to go to her funeral, one I wasn't invited to. The church was already packed when I arrived. I could see all the black dresses, the umbrellas, the expensive cars double-parked outside. My heels clicked against the concrete as I approached the door. I reached for the handle, but someone stepped in front of me. It was Uncle Ifani. His face was like stone. "You're not welcome here," he said flatly. My voice came out cracked. "She was my grandmother. You were cut off," he said. "Don't cause a scene. Not today." Behind him, I saw my cousin Nia glance back at me, whisper something to Clara, then smirk. My throat burned. "Let me say goodbye." Ifani didn't blink. "You said goodbye when you left this family." Then he shut the door in my face. I stood outside for a long moment. Then I walked around the side of the building. My heels sank into wet grass as I stepped behind a hedge, then toward the side window. I wiped the fog off the glass with my palm. And that's where I stood, watching my own grandmother's funeral, through a damn window. The choir was singing. Clara was fake crying in the front row. Everyone looked so dressed up, so holy, so put together. As if they hadn't left Mama Ojeki to die quietly in her own house, without the one person who actually cared. My fists were clenched so tight, my nails cut into my palms. I wanted to scream, to burst through the doors, to drag Clara by her overpriced wig and demand answers. But Mama wouldn't have wanted that. She always told me, revenge is best served in silence. Let them think they've won. So I stood there, my eyes burning, as they lowered her casket into the ground. And I made a promise to myself right then and there. I'm going to find out why they kept me away. And I'm going to take back everything that's mine. I don't know how long I sat in my car after the funeral. Maybe an hour. Maybe 2. The rain came down soft, thin and steady, like it didn't want to make noise. The windshield wipers kept moving, but I hadn't driven anywhere. My fingers were clenched around the steering wheel like I was trying to hold myself together. I didn't even turn the engine off. I just kept seeing it over and over again. My family burying Mama Ojeki while I stood outside like a stranger. Like I didn't matter. Like she hadn't raised me with her own hands. They erased me. Just like that. I finally made it back to my apartment sometime after midnight. My shoes were soaked. My coat was stained from the dirty church grass. But I didn't care. I dropped everything on the floor, walked into the kitchen, and sat down with the one thing I had left of her. Her cookbook. Mama Ojeki's old, beat-up, oil-stained Nigerian cookbook. The one she never let anyone touch without washing their hands first. She used to call it her real diary. I kept it wrapped in ankara cloth inside the pantry, hidden between dusty bags of rice and plantain flour. The pages were soft from age, and the corners curled like dried leaves. The smell, peppers, thyme, stock cubes, hit me the moment I opened it. It almost broke me. I flipped through slowly. Gusi, soup, mama. The recipes were in her handwriting, soft, rounded letters that curved like music. She'd even written notes to herself in the margins. Too much oil last time. Nia doesn't like it spicy, ignore her. Add crayfish for Amarachi, she'll complain otherwise. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again through tears. And that's when I felt something strange. As I ran my thumb along the inside spine, I noticed a hard ridge, something stiff under the binding. My heart stopped. I turned the book to the side, slid my finger in and pulled. An envelope, wrapped in old tape. My name written on it in her handwriting. Amarachi. My chest tightened as I peeled the tape away and opened it. Inside were two things: a folded letter, and a bank envelope containing a plastic keycard and a thick piece of folded paper. I opened the letter first. Her voice came rushing back the moment I read the first line. My baby girl. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and they've done what I feared. Clara always wanted it all to herself. Ifani is her shadow. They will try to erase you like they erased your mother. But listen carefully. Everything I built is yours. Covered my mouth. My eyes dropped to the next lines. The restaurant chain. The export accounts. The land in Nigeria. The house. I moved everything into your name last year. My lawyer has the instructions. Bucky knows everything. I didn't tell you earlier because I feared they'd come for you first. Clara believes blood equals inheritance. But you and I know better. Loyalty is stronger than DNA. Take the key. Go home. Take back what's yours. My hands were shaking. I opened the second envelope. Inside was a bank-issued security card, labeled Private Vault, Sunfirst Bank, and behind it, a legal-looking document with my name in bold at the top. Beneficiary, Amarachi Okafor. Total account holdings, $2,187,000. Assets assigned, 4 restaurant properties, 1 residential estate, 2 international holdings. I sat there completely frozen. They didn't just ban me from her funeral. They didn't just cut me off. They tried to steal everything from me. And they thought I'd never find out. The second I pushed open the door to Mama Ojeki's restaurant, everything in me tensed. The bell above the door gave that soft little ding, and just like that, the energy in the whole place shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A waitress paused mid-step. Someone in the kitchen dropped something metal, then quickly disappeared behind the door. They all saw me, and I saw them trying to pretend they didn't. But I didn't shrink. I didn't smile. I just walked across the floor like I had every right to be there. 'Cause I did. The place looked different now, wrong almost. The colors were off, the curtains replaced. The portraits of Mama and the black and white family photos that used to cover the walls were all gone. I glanced around and spotted a poster that said, now rebranded, Ojeki's Fine African Fusion, in a cheap font that made me want to throw up. They'd stripped her identity and slapped a name tag on her legacy. And they thought I'd never come back. The door to the back office creaked open. And there she was. Clara. High heels. Burgundy suit. Face beat like she was going to a campaign fundraiser, not running a restaurant. Her eyes locked on mine and didn't move. Her mouth didn't smile. Her expression didn't shift. It was like she was trying to read how much I knew. Look what the cat dragged in, she said, arms folded. Surprised you had the nerve. Kept my voice calm. Nice to see you too, Auntie. She stepped closer. If you came here to cause problems, Amarachi, you can turn around and walk right back out. This is a business. And you were not invited. I tilted my head slightly. Just came for a plate of egusi soup. Unless my money's not welcome anymore either. She scoffed. This isn't a charity. No. It's an empire, I said, loud enough for the staff to hear. One that doesn't belong to you. Something flickered across her face. Twitch of the eye. A muscle in her jaw. She tried to recover, but I could tell. I'd hit something raw. I don't know what kind of fantasy you've spun up, she said coolly. But this place was built by your grandmother. And now it's under my direction. She entrusted it to people she could rely on. I reached into my bag and calmly laid the bank document on the counter between us. She didn't pick it up. But I knew she saw the words at the top. Beneficiary, Amarachi Okafor. Her face changed just a little. She blinked once, too slow. That's not real. It's certified. You can call Lawson if you want. She took a step forward, voice low and sharp. You think you can just walk in here with a piece of paper and undo what this family built? You disappeared, Mara. You left. I stared right at her. No. You locked the doors and pretended I never existed. Behind her, I saw my cousin Nia come out from the office, arms crossed. She gave me that same smirk she wore at the funeral, like she knew something I didn't. What's the plan here? Clara said, stepping closer again. You want to sue us? Tear the family apart. For what? Some cooked-up promise from a woman who was barely lucid the last year of her life. I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. She was lucid enough to see through you. Clara's eyes narrowed into slits. I smiled politely, picked up my document and turned to walk out. I didn't need to fight her here. Not yet. Because now she knew the truth. I wasn't just some grieving girl showing up for drama. I was the legal owner of everything she thought she had stolen. Clara thought she had time. That much I could see in her face the moment I walked away from the restaurant. She was shaken but not scared. I needed to change that. One piece of paper wouldn't be enough. That vault document proved the assets were mine, but it didn't explain how. And I already knew what they'd do next. Spin lies, plant doubt, paint me as some forgotten side piece of the family, confused by grief. That's how they work. Always behind closed doors. Always just enough lies to sound like the truth. I needed the will. The original one. Lawson had confirmed there was another version, the one Mama Ojeki gave him months before she died. It was supposed to be filed officially, but before he could certify it, Clara swooped in with new documents, the day after Mama passed. Claimed it was a revised final version written on her deathbed. He admitted he should have pushed back harder. But Clara came with threats, expensive lawyers, and a funeral already in motion. The damage was done. He said the only other person who knew the full truth was someone named Bucky. My stomach dropped. Bucky. Mama's housekeeper. A sister friend. The only other adult who treated me like a full person growing up. I hadn't seen her in years. She still lived in the back quarters behind Mama's house in East Point. Same tiny bungalow with a sagging porch and mango tree out front. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her eyes filled with tears instantly. Amarachi. She touched my face like I was a ghost. You came. I nodded once. Did you know they didn't even tell me she died? Her lips trembled. I knew, but I was told not to call you. Clara made it clear. I held up my hand. It's okay. I'm not here to guilt you. I just need to know the truth. Did Mama ever give you a copy of the will? Her eyes darted to the side. She hesitated. Please, I said. I need it. They've already filed a fake one. I need to prove she meant it all for me. She motioned me inside. Her place smelled like thyme and lemon disinfectant. Clean, simple, full of memories I'd forgotten I missed. She walked into the kitchen, then disappeared into the back room. I stayed in the doorway, chewing on my bottom lip. When she came back, she was holding a rusted biscuit tin. The kind old Nigerian aunties keep sewing needles and secret money in. She opened the lid slowly and pulled out a sealed brown envelope with Mama Ojeki's handwriting on the front. Final will, for Amarachi when the time comes. My throat tightened. I reached for it with both hands. I kept it hidden, she said softly. Clara searched this whole house when Mama passed. Turned it upside down. But she never checked the old generator behind the shed. I laughed. A sharp, startled kind of laugh. You hid it in the generator. She grinned. She was afraid of getting electrocuted. Even from dead things. I held the envelope against my chest and closed my eyes for a second. This was it. This was the weapon I needed. Inside was the real will. Clean. Damp. Witnessed. Everything by the book. It named me sole heir to all restaurant and food service properties. The primary residence in East Point. 75% of the International Export Company. Personal savings and foreign accounts. Her business trademarks and recipes. Clara, Ifani and Nia. Nothing. Just one line. No distribution is to be made to any family member who acted against my interest or dishonored Amarachi in my final years. It was so deliberate, so clear. I wasn't the leftover. I wasn't the side note. I was the legacy. That night, I made a copy of the entire will and sent it to Lawson with one line in the email. It's time for a public reading. Let's see how they perform when the curtains are pulled back. They came dressed like it was the Oscars. Clara wore a navy blue suit, high heels clicking across the tiled floor of the lawyer's office like she was strutting a red carpet. Nia followed behind her in a tight black dress and gold earrings that screamed old money, even though none of it belonged to her. Ifani brought his usual scowl, walking with that stiff fake dignity he always used when he knew he was about to be called out but wanted to act surprised. I sat there already. My copy of the will in my bag, heart steady. They didn't know yet. They still thought I was bluffing, that I'd brought some half-baked claim and they'd wave it off with a signature and a snide comment. I saw it in the way Clara barely looked at me as she sat, like I was just background noise. Like I'd fade away again. Mr. Lawson came in, adjusted his bow tie, and sat behind the large oak desk with a polite but tight smile. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "This reading has been scheduled to clarify the estate distribution per the instructions of Madame Ojeki Okafor." Clara raised a hand like she was in church. "Sorry, but we already filed the documents last month. We were told this part wasn't necessary." Mr. Lawson looked directly at her and didn't blink. "Actually, this part is very necessary. Seems there was a second will. One dated months earlier and legally filed with full witnesses, which overrides any others unless proven otherwise." She didn't respond, but the silence in the room snapped like dry wood. I didn't look at her. I just folded my hands in my lap and waited. Lawson continued. "As stated in her final instructions, the sole legal beneficiary to Madame Ojeki's personal, residential and business assets is," he looked up at me, "Amarachi Okafor." Clara choked on her breath. Ifani leaned forward. "What?" Nia laughed. Actually laughed, like it was a joke she didn't understand yet. "Wait, what are you talking about?" Lawson unfolded the full document. "Restaurants, export business, main residence, all transferred to Amarachi under this legally binding will. No secondary beneficiaries. No division of ownership. This includes all trademarks, bank accounts, and property rights." I sat still. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. I wanted them to hear the words without distraction. "You've got to be kidding me," Clara muttered, shaking her head. That's not even possible. Mama never, she wouldn't have done that." "She did," I said quietly. She snapped her head toward me. "You manipulated her. She was old. You preyed on her." "No," I cut in. "She saw you for exactly who you are. And she didn't want her life's work ending up in greedy hands." Ifani slammed his hand on the table. "This is a setup. This whole thing is fake." "She left it with me," Lawson said, calmly tapping the notary seal. "Weeks before her death. Your forged will, on the other hand, wasn't certified or witnessed. It won't stand in court." Clara stood up fast, knocking the chair back. "You think this is over? You think you're just gonna walk into her life and wear her crown like you earned it?" I stood too. "I don't have to wear anything," I said. "It's already mine." For a second she didn't say anything. Her lips trembled slightly. Then she looked at Nia, then back at me. "You won't hold on to it. You're not built for this." "No," I said, picking up my bag. "But I'm built to fight for like her." And as
Even
I walked
after
past
everything
them,
had been
I heard
gutted,
Ifani
painted
mutter under
over,
his breath.
rebranded, modernized.
"She doesn't know what she's
The ghost
just
of Mama
started."
Ojeki
He was
lingered
right,
in the corners of
but
that
neither
building
did
like
they.
smoke.
Like the smell of fried onions and hot pepper that never really left the walls. I stood in the middle of what used to be her private office, now empty, whitewashed, scrubbed of character. The fake art they'd hung on the wall was already leaning, crooked. They'd erased her touch but couldn't hide the cracks underneath. The moment the real will had been read, I moved fast. I didn't give Clara time to twist the narrative. I had the legal claim now, the title transfers, the account authorizations, all of it filed. I walked back in with my name on the lease and keys in hand. But this wasn't just about claiming it. It was about fixing what they'd broken. The restaurant chain, Mama's Table, before Clara changed it to Ojeki's Fine African Fusion, had 4 locations across Atlanta. They were bleeding. Customers stopped coming. Word had gotten around. The food wasn't the same. The soul was gone. The hands in the kitchen weren't seasoned. They were corporate. I spent the next few weeks working quietly. No announcements. No posts. Just showing up. Listening. Watching. I went to each branch and spoke to the staff. I didn't fire anyone yet. I needed to know who was still loyal, who was just there for a paycheck, and who was leaking info. 'Cause something was leaking. Menus I hadn't released yet started showing up in online ads for Clara's new venture. One of the suppliers dropped us suddenly with no reason given. Rumors were being planted. Whispers that I was mismanaging, ruining the brand, running it into the ground. Someone inside was feeding her everything. I narrowed it down to 2 names. One was Ngozi, a shift manager from the flagship location who had been with the company since the beginning but magically got promoted when Clara took over. So I set a trap. I accidentally left a fake printout of a rebranding campaign on my desk during a shift meeting. New logo. New menu items. None of it real. 3 days later, the same concept showed up on a Facebook page tied to Clara's consulting firm. And that was all I needed. I called Ngozi into the office that evening, closed the door behind her, and laid the fake menu on the desk. She didn't sit. "What's this?" she asked, eyes flicking between the paper and me. "You tell me." "I don't. Don't lie to me in this room. Not here. You know who built these walls." She shifted her weight. Her face cracked just slightly. "They said you'd ruin it," she whispered. I stood up. Slowly. My voice was calm. "They said whatever they had to say to keep control. But let me tell you what you just ruined: your job, your reputation, and your relationship with the one person who would have protected you." Her face dropped. She opened her mouth, but I shook my head. "You're done. Get your things." And I watched her walk out. Not because I liked seeing her break, but because now I knew for sure. Clara was still coming. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days that followed were quieter, but not calm. There was a difference. The kitchen noises came back. The clatter of spoons against aluminum pots. The burn of Scotch bonnet in the air. Customers started to return, slowly at first. Old men who used to call Mama Sister Ojeki when they came in for egusi and star beer. Aunties who remembered the taste of her jollof blindfolded. They nodded at me when they ordered, like they saw something they'd been waiting for. But I didn't let it soften me. Clara hadn't gone silent because she was defeated. She'd gone silent because she was regrouping. And I needed help. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Luca. He was my first friend. Back when Mama was still teaching me how to stir okra without breaking it. He lived 2 blocks down and used to sneak over when Clara wasn't watching. We built sandcastles in the backyard and got whipped together for breaking Mama's mortar bowl. He left Atlanta for college in D.C. but always said, "If you ever need backup, just say the word." This was the word. He showed up at the restaurant the next morning in a hoodie, with a laptop under his arm and a grin that hadn't changed. "Still think jollof should be spicy enough to make you cry?" he asked as soon as he stepped inside. "Only if you're weak," I said, hugging him tight. We set up shop in Mama's old office, turned everything into a command center. He started running diagnostics on the business accounts, passwords, vendor portals. Helped me rebuild the back end that Clara and her people had twisted into a mess of hidden fees and inflated payouts. That's when he found it. 3 accounts that shouldn't exist. Same business name. Slightly altered LLC numbers. They'd been funneling 4% of revenue, every single week, into private accounts registered in Ifani's name. Ghost companies with no websites, no staff, just bank trails and hush money. It had been going on for 4 years. Clara and Ifani weren't just trying to steal the empire. They'd already been bleeding it dry. I sat back in my chair, staring at the numbers. "She knew," I muttered. "Mama knew they were doing this. That's why she moved everything over to me early. She wasn't just protecting the legacy. She was building a case." Chuka looked up from the screen. If you want to bring this to court, I can help. But if we do that, it won't be private. It'll get loud. I didn't even hesitate. Good, I said. Let them hear it. But we didn't make it to court that week. Because the next morning I found my car parked behind the restaurant, with the windows smashed in and a note taped to the driver's seat. All it said was, "This isn't yours. Walk away. While you still can." I didn't flinch. Because that was the first real sign that Clara was scared. The courtroom smelled like bleach and sweat. Not the kind of sweat that came from nerves, but the kind that clung to your skin when you were cornered and couldn't lie your way out. Clara sat at the plaintiff's table like she still owned the world. Her pearl earrings caught the light, and her jaw was locked so tight I could see the tension ripple through her neck. Ifani sat beside her, breathing loud, as though each inhale was a performance. Nia was nowhere in sight. I guess she didn't want to be photographed losing. I sat across from them, calm, deliberate, black suit, no makeup. Just my face, name, and my case. Chuka was behind me in the gallery with a laptop and 3 flash drives, each one loaded with damning numbers. Every funnel account, every fake invoice, every vendor with a forged signature. The judge was a middle-aged woman with gray roots in her hair and zero patience. She didn't smile. She didn't lean into drama. She just called things as they were. Perfect. My lawyer, Ms. Barrett, started with the forensics. Bank transfers. LLC registrations. Timelines. The shell companies were all tied to Ifani. Clara's name didn't appear directly, but her email was on the authorizations. She couldn't wiggle out of it. Clara sat stiff through the first half, occasionally scribbling notes or whispering to her lawyer like they were still confident this was salvageable. Then we showed the DNA report. I hadn't planned to use it. But the moment Clara said, under oath, she was never legally Ojeki's grandchild. She was just something Mama picked up after her son left her to rot. I let it fly. Ms. Barrett handed the judge the certified document and said, "Your Honor, this test confirms a direct maternal match between my client and Madame Ojeki Okafor. Amarachi is not only her granddaughter, she's her biological heir." Clara's face froze. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared ahead like the oxygen had left the room. Ifani tried to interrupt, stammering about alternative paternity assumptions and late-stage confusion. The judge shut it down. And when it was my turn to speak, I stood. "I never wanted to be here," I said, voice steady. "I wanted to grieve my grandmother. In peace. The woman who raised me when everyone else treated me like a stain. But instead of giving me that, they stole her funeral. Tried to erase me. And then tried to take everything she left behind. Money, buildings, her name. All of it. But what they didn't know was that she'd already protected me. She already knew what they were." Clara looked up at me then. Her eyes were wet. For once, she didn't say anything. No comebacks. No poison. Just silence. The judge leaned forward. "I've heard enough." She ruled in my favor. The will stood. The businesses, properties, and accounts were officially declared mine. If I wanted to pursue charges for fraud and embezzlement, I could. But I didn't. I walked out of that courtroom without a victory dance, without a word to Clara or Ifani, without even looking back. Because I'd already taken what mattered. And they knew it. The fire started just after midnight. I was asleep when Chuka called. His voice was tight, flat. The kind of voice people use when they're trying not to scream. "You need to get down to Campbellton. The main restaurant's on fire." I was out the door before he finished the sentence. By the time I got there, the sky was orange. Flames licked the roof like it was paper. Smoke curled high above the building like a black flag waving in surrender. The windows had already burst. Firefighters were shouting, hoses spraying, neighbors standing across the street in robes and slippers, murmuring my name like it was some tragic headline. I pushed past the tape. Firefighter stopped me. "Ma'am, I own this place." He looked at me for 1 second, saw something in my face, and let me through. I stood there, feet rooted to the sidewalk, heart hollow. This was the heart of everything. The first restaurant Mama built with her bare hands. The one she named Table 1 because it had started with a single plastic table and 4 chairs. I used to sweep the floors here when I was 9. Mama taught me how to roll puff dough in that back kitchen. I could still hear her voice in my head. Don't be stingy with the spices, Amarachi. Your food should speak louder than your name. Now the building hissed and cracked as the flames devoured it. Chuka stood beside me, breathing hard. It was arson. No doubt. I didn't ask how he knew. Clara had an alibi, she always would. Ifani was too stupid to pull something like this off clean. But it didn't matter. I knew what this was. Their last card. Burn it down if you can't own it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just watched it fall. Then, just before the firefighters broke through the last door, something tumbled from a blown-out window and landed near my feet. A picture frame, scorched at the edges but still whole. I bent down and picked it up. It was a photo of Mama and me. The same one that used to hang over the register. I held it tight. Let them burn the building. The empire is still mine. What would you have done in my shoes? Walked away for good or given them one last chance? I'd love to hear your take. And if these kinds of stories pull you in, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.